right, and joining us this morning for the conversation from our Kaduna studio, we have Professor Yushau Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, Kaduna State University. It is always a pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigerian. Good morning, Nigerians. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, and we also have here in the studio Dr. Tochukwu Okafo. Dr. Okafo is a senior economic analyst and lecturer, Biz University. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, from our Ibadan Network Center, we are being joined by an associate research professor at NISA, which is based in Ibadan. That is the Institute for Socio-Economic Research. Femi Ogundele. Mr. Ogundele, we're glad to have you this morning. Mr. Ogundele, we're glad to have you this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so gentlemen, we are expecting another of our regular guests to join us from our Benin Network studios. We understand that it's been raining since last night in Benin City, and of course those who are familiar with the rainforest belt would know that when the heavens open up there, it can be quite a while before the heavens close again, and the people will make their way through the city to get to their various locations. So once we get our guest from our Benin Network studios, we'll introduce him. But let's begin with Professor Yushau Ango. Professor Yushau Ango, of course, is a regular on Good Morning Nigeria. The background to our conversation, you've always been our guest whenever we are discussing issues relating to the economy, the financial health of the country, and more particularly the health of our national currency, the Naira. It's a new regime that we're having in terms of Forex transactions, and many are getting concerned about the value of the Naira, 775. Some are happy that there appears to now be a merger between the I&E window, investors and exporters window, and the parallel rate, which had always been a mirage. Are we at the risk of speculative attacks? And if so, what does that mean?
Well, basically, like has been stated in the earlier report, there are investors, there are people who are willing and able, to take positions, on the currency or on the economy generally, either on the stock market or on the currency of the country, and dump when they need to dump and leave. So that affects currencies and that affects markets. We are familiar, for example, with what happened with the Asian crisis of 1997, when such investors or such investors who are maybe perhaps coming from abroad actually wreaked havoc on the economies of Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia and the like. So that kind of thing happens, and we have seen already with the development so many interests is coming in terms of volume of investors in the capital market and the like. So naturally such possibilities are there. But in an open economy, in a free market economy, such kind of things do happen. The only thing is, for the central bank and for the managers of the Nigerian economy, to do the right thing, to ensure, that we don't allow some of those things to continue. However, you cannot completely erase such possibilities. Now, what happened, for example, is that, when a country's currency becomes attractive, some people will borrow money, from the money market and invest it, in this kind of sector, take a position and dump, like I said, when they feel it's the right time to dump. Now, those possibilities are there, and I believe we have a lot to do, in terms of what the central bank can do and other managers of our economy can do to limit that possibility, but that possibility do exist.
Okay, we appreciate your initial comments. We'll definitely come back to you. Now, let's return to Abuja, where we have Dr. Tuchuku Okafor, Senior Economic Analyst and Lecturer at the Base University. Well, the nation has always operated what I may refer to as epileptic Forex exchange system. And that since the Fourth Republic in 1999, we have not seen any government that brought about a stabilization of foreign exchange market in this country. Well, perhaps for obvious reasons. Now, give us your reading of the actions being taken by the current administration to address the issue concerning a forex exchange and other matters arising.
Oh, okay. First off, I'll touch a little on what the earlier speaker spoke on with regards to speculation. Like he said, you can't totally remove it, but in between now and the first quarter of 2024, I don't think we'll see any significant speculation in the market for a couple of reasons, right? From the monetary aspect and from the economic realities that we're witnessing. Now, last month alone, it was very eventful. It was an eventful month. We started with subsidy removal, and then the CBN governor, and then the RT200 and the Naira for dollar were all removed. Now, this is going to relate to that question which you asked. Now, the truth is, if I'm going to start from the monetary angle, the premium between the I and E window now and the parallel market is not that significant for speculation and arbitrage, right? It's there, but it's not something that is going to spike any interest of people that want to arbitrage. Take, for instance, immediately after the announcement of the floating exchange rate, I think one of the trading sessions, Naira went as high as 860. And an interesting thing happened, which I commend the administration for. Someone in the market was selling at 460. And while the person was selling at 460, we discovered that by the end of trading session that day, we ended at 778. As opposed to the 860 that was happening that day. And we know that no private entity is going to do that. We know that that is going to be definitely a government entity, even though the sources were not disclosed at that point in time. So what we are going to be seeing is Nigerians are more focused on survival now, and what is at the top burner is survival rather than the speculation. We are seeing fuel prices go above 300%, and when you have that crisis, you notice that, if you even notice the stock market, it has gotten very interesting now. Stock market, I think as at yesterday, inched up by 1.6%. Market cap was ending at 3.7 as opposed to 3.1 on Friday. So when you see all these things, you now know that a huge chunk of money is going to the banking, stocks and whatnot. But the problem now is people are not going to be speculating. What they are speculating is the stock market, right? And the investors are looking out, because the investors are the source of solution to this problem. So if the investors are looking at the market, right now we think they are just investing. No, they are watching the market because of the new regime and the business inclined regime. So if in the next 3 months any policy ignites their passion for the economy, right, with regards to security and what they call infrastructure, we are going to see a subsequent relax with regards to the exchange rate. Then at that point we can start talking probably fourth quarter speculation. But another thing we need to also know is floating shouldn't be the permanent solution at this point. This is just a remedial solution, because if we stick to floating, chances are we might even enter the 800 to 900 threshold. So what we should be looking at, as the regime has already said, is a crawling peg, right? Crawling peg is actually going to help balance this whole center around 700, 600. And then the Bank of America, I think day before yesterday or last week, came out with a report, a research, saying that the Naira is now undervalued as opposed to when it was overvalued, that the actual figures for the Naira when the whole dust settles is around 680 to 685. So when we put all this into context, we now discover that the concept of speculation is going to be limited until the first or second quarter of 2024. But this year, speculation is going to be limited. If there's going to be any speculation, we're going to be seeing speculation in the stock market, not the currency itself.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Okafor. We'll come back to you. Let's go back to Ibadan now, where we earlier introduced Associate Research Professor at NISA, Femi Ogundele. Femi Ogundele, what's your reading of the foreign exchange market in the country? I mean, this time last year, the Naira was around about 600 and something, and then following the announcement by the central bank about a month or so ago, we have seen the Naira merge in value with the II window and the parallel market. What's happening to our Naira? Speculation or what?
Thank you very much. I think I want to agree with the position of Dr. Okafor that we might not be seeing significant speculative attack on Naira in the next few months, and the reason is obvious. Once the gap or the premium between the parallel market and the official rate is not that much, speculators are likely to relax in terms of their activities. Of course, we also know that one of the main reasons why the speculators actually are on serious business is when they observe that whatever they invest in the foreign exchange is more than the premium they will receive, or what that they are going to pay as interest on the money that they borrow from the money bank to invest in this foreign exchange market. Then they go ahead and speculate. But at this point in time now, given the interest rate, the current interest rate, and the closeness of the gap between the official rate and the parallel market, the activities of the speculators are likely going to be put under check. I think what we should be thinking of now is the other angle to the exchange rate. The other angle of the pressure to the exchange rate itself, which is the angle of the demand for the exchange rate, and the fact that whether our foreign reserve will be able to sustain the pressure that the demand for exchange rate we put on the foreign reserve as a result of this merger of the exchange rate process. If we are able to manage this over time, I think the level of attack on Naira by speculators will be reduced to the barest minimum.
Okay, well spoken, and you aligned yourself with Dr. Okafor's postulations, and we'll have to return again to Professor Joshua Ango once more. So would you like to also touch on what the two speakers have just said with respect to the speculation aspect of this conversation? We will also add to that the aspect of what a nation could do, because my view about perhaps views of other Nigerians could be that because of the status of our level of production in the country and poor or rather inability to export as much as possible to be able to earn foreign reserve, that all these are reflective of what we're seeing today. I want you to put all that into context to say, look, we are not a producing nation if you compare us to other nations who are into production, and we are trying to grapple with the issue of foreign exchange because of course we have issue of importing over 90% of what the country requires to operate industrially and otherwise. So how would you put all that into context to say, look, this speculative aspect that we're talking about, if it is positive or negative, what should be our expectation going forward?
Kieran, you see, if you notice what has happened in the market, here, again, like Kingsley said, we have discussed this matter quite a number of times. I was of the opinion that merging the three rates then was not feasible. You know, I thought, because what has happened before was that every time you try to merge, the parallel market will move up again. But what we are seeing, and my worry and my concern, why I said, why I was looking at possibility of speculation, is because people can move. You know, money is fluid. You can move from one to the other. So if there is something high activity in the stock market, if they dump it, you know, it can also now, they want to now take up money in the other market. But this has been done now successfully. That is, the merger has happened successfully. But what we have not been able to do in the last few years, sincerely, was that we have not been able to manage this this currency. If you remember, I mean, what was the exchange rate 1 year away from today, 2 years from today, 3 years from today? So it's not the merger that is the problem. The merger is a solution and is the right thing that has been done. However, my concern is that if we don't manage the other markets surrounding this foreign exchange market, then again, the possibility of having Naira exchanging at 1,000, at 2,000, at 1,005 is also possible. So basically, given what you have said earlier, which is also true, that we are a country that depends substantially on exporting one major product, and we're a country that depends substantially on imported products for our day-to-day activities, then certainly there will be pressure on our foreign reserves, and our foreign reserve has to be able to withstand. And like what the second speaker said is true, the government or various agencies can intervene in this market one way or another by moderating the market. Now that capacity to moderate the market, that capacity to make sure the market does not go beyond certain limits means that you must have certain muscle. You must have certain foreign reserves adequate to be able to do that. Now that is the delicate balance that has to be maintained. I will not want to see a situation whereby the currency becomes too floating, like has been stated, you know, where we say we're going to adopt a crawling peg. So let us adopt that. Central bank should be decisive. They should be decisive. They should make sure there is some form of stability. The rate is reasonable, whatever it is, but let it be stable. Let it not be going out of whack. You know, let it not just be changing anyhow. And sincerely, that is what has happened in the last 3-4 years. We have actually not managed the exchange rate, and nobody does that. Every serious economy will normally want to manage not necessarily window dress it, but manage it in such a way that it doesn't fluctuate too much. Now, let me give you the example of what happened during the currency or the economic crisis of 1997 in the Asian crisis. Now, all other countries, Philippines, Thailand, you know, and the like, you know, they took IMF programs and they devalued their currencies extraordinarily. Malaysia did not do the same. You know, of course, their currency was devalued in the process, but they refused to take those. But they were decisive. They were firm. And after from 2.14 to 2.5 to ringgit to a dollar, it reached up to 4 point something. But because of the policies they took, it came down to 3.8 and things like that. What I'm propounding basically is that there should be some form of moderation, and that is what Dr. Okapo said has happened in a way, and that kind of intervention is what should happen. Markets should be allowed to work, but then as much as possible, central bank must ensure that there is some kind of band, you know, that they can announce, or they can even keep it to themselves, but they work with it. But major fluctuations will now want to make people to now dump and now move out to safety, and that is what could lead to some problems. So people can move from capital market to the foreign exchange market, from money market, that is the borrowing market, the deposit market, to foreign exchange market, and vice versa, you know, like that. So that stability, that decisiveness is what I'm proposing that central bank should have, you know, to ensure that we don't go back to what has happened before. Like has been stated, even by one of the speakers again, at some point the central bank was blaming, okay, I think it was Karian, that they were blaming Aboki. You know, that is just nothing. You know, manage what you have to manage, not blame others for, do what you are supposed to do, control these things. This has happened before. You know, we have been able at some point before to manage our currency for a long period of time without much problem. So we should be able to do that now, and if we do that, I believe it will be better for the economy.
Professor Yushau Ango, thank you very much for your contribution. Now we have our guests ready from our Benin Network Center. It's a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Mike Obadan, Professor of Economics and Non-Executive Director and member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Professor Mike Obadan, I don't know how much of the conversation you've been able to get before you were mic'd up for participation in today's interaction. We're looking at the state of the Naira. They just say apparently now there is a merger between the I and E window and the parallel rate. And it appears that it's around about 7.7 something, 7.5 something. Nobody's quite sure. But ultimately, there are concerns in some quarters about the need to avoid speculative attacks on the currency. What are you reading?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I'm very pleased to be with you. I had some hitches. Heavy rain fell this morning, and that flooded a number of areas. So I'm very glad to be here, at last. Yes, the Naira has been floated in the foreign exchange market, and market forces of demand and supply largely determine the exchange rate. All along, there have been speculative attacks on the Naira, arising from largely the very huge arbitrage between the official rate and then the rates in the parallel market, as it were. Speculative attacks are also encouraged by the unstable macroeconomic conditions in the economy. Very high rate of inflation in the economy, reducing the purchasing power of the currency, and of course the unilateral depreciation of the exchange rate for quite some time. Those factors have encouraged speculative attacks. But let me make one point clear, Kingsley, that speculation exists in most economies. Currency speculation, I mean. And even in the advanced foreign exchange markets, you still have speculators. There are professional people who earn their living through currency speculation. They deliberately take foreign exchange risk, by taking uncovered positions so as to make, a profit. And such speculators, always read movements in the exchange rates. In other words, they have their own expectations about how the exchange rate is going to move. Either, depreciates, appreciates. And then on that basis, they either buy foreign currency or sell, and in the process, they make their gain. That is, if their expectations are right. But if their expectations are not right, they lose, which means they take, risk. So invariably, whether we now have, a deregulated market or not, speculators will always exist. What has happened now is that the major triggers of currency speculation and then attacks, on the Naira, have been minimized through the apparent closure of the gap between, the parallel market rate and the official rate. In other words, minimize, the gap between them. So invariably, we cannot say that because the market, the exchange rates, the official rates have been unified and the market is deregulated, that will not have speculative attacks. There are certain factors that will make such attacks, minimum. Let me also say that it's not all speculations, currency speculations, that are bad. we have stabilizing speculation, and we also have destabilizing, speculation. Is the destabilizing, speculation that elicites deep concerns. That is the one that arises when the exchange rate is rising in terms of Naira, and speculators are buying, buying foreign exchange, further driving up, the exchange rate. Such speculation is destabilizing. But if in the system we have speculators, that when the exchange rate is very low and very much below what is called the normal level, equilibrium level, and such speculators buy foreign exchange, you see their actions will help to drive up the exchange rate to an equilibrium level, which means it will help to stabilize, the exchange rate. And I will just add that, yes, at the moment, currency speculation is minimum, but what will help to minimize the speculation would be what the monetary authority and the government would do, to ensure very, improved supply of foreign exchange. If foreign exchange supply improves significantly, then definitely currency speculation and attacks, on, the Naira, will be very minimum. And secondly, the issue of macroeconomic stability is fundamental. To the extent that the macroeconomy is not stable, inflation is rising, and then demand for imported goods continue to rise, then you will find that, currency speculation, will continue. So in a nutshell, we may not be able to rule out currency speculation, in the future, in the economy. There will always be speculators, but it could be minimized through appropriate fiscal policy, appropriate monetary policy, and then doing something about production.
Returning to you, because you have made a very crucial point here this morning with respect to the topic for conversation. And what I'm taking home from what you've just said is that currency speculation, it could be a facet of foreign exchange business globally. It could be negative or it could be positive, right? So, and you have said that Naira has been floated. Therefore, market forces of demand and supply will have to determine, the rates, and which is a very crucial point. And I want to bring you in there, Dr. Okafor. Part of what Professor Bana said was that people speculate. In time past, the CBN, alluded to people deceitfully buying foreign exchange from banks using fake visas and under the pretext of traveling only to cancel their tickets afterwards. How can the Apex Bank check these nefarious activities? Because after said and done, it all weighs in on the issue of our foreign exchange market system.
There's a new policy now that the CBN is putting forth. I think it was discussed earlier about KYC, knowing your customer and then getting the handles of customers and whatnot. Now, the truth about this is the aim of doing that digitalization is more like seeing a history of what this person has been up to, right, online. Right, the digital space. If you see someone that really wants to travel or really wants to go for scholarship, one of the things you see in their chat history is a breakdown of some of the cost implication of where they're going to. And then you get to decipher, okay, is this person really going to this place, or is this person not going to this place? So the aim of getting the KYC is going to give a history to the bank, so that when you are coming for certain applications or for loans or for PT or BT or whatever, they go back to your history and see whether you've been researching on some of the places you've been going. I think the visa offices do this too. So more often than not, they go back to your chat history or your browsing history and see what, especially those that are going for scholarship, they always check apartments, rent apartments, locations, close proximity to school. So this gives you an overview of view of whether to lend to this person or not to lend to this person. This is one of the major milestones that they're trying to cover in this dispensation. Now, with regards, I need to go into what Professor Obadan said. With regards to the reserve, right? Our reserves have been depleting, we already know, as at between January and now, I think it has depleted from $35 billion to, I think we are currently on 34.6. But what is good about it is that the import component requirement for every country is, I think, $5 billion per month, and then a minimum of 6 months is required. So if you do that statistics, I think if you do 5 billion into 6 months, we are having 30 billion, and we have 34.6 billion in their accounts. So with what is happening, which is the example I also gave, if they have an extra 4.6 billion to walk around with, that is something that is going to help stabilize, and that's why it's going to only be feasible in the short run for this floating exchange rate. Crawling peg has to come in before that runs out. But the good thing again is oil prices have also, I said oil prices, oil production has also increased. At least from April of 999,000, we've bumped up to 1.3 million barrels per day. So we should expect certain revenue to start entering the reserves, and with the investors' confidence that are coming with this new administration, which is earmarked on hope, we are going to see a certain level of revenue coming, even though it's at the cost of the inflationary impact on the general public. So the truth about it is there's going to be a buffer for this third quarter, but the fourth quarter is not guaranteed, because that is when investors are going to finally make their decision on what they feel about this administration, and that is what is actually going to determine whether speculation, like Professor Badan said, is going to kick up again, or whether it's going to be stabilized till, like I said, the second quarter of 2024.
Dr. Okafor, thank you very much. Associate Research Professor at NICE, Femi Ogundele at our Ibadan Network Center. This question is coming to you. Now, when we had the wide margin between the rate at the IIN window and the parallel rate, one of the arguments that we heard frequently was that, oh, look, the parallel rate represents only a tiny sliver of the foreign exchange market, that most of the transactions take place on the IIN window. In other words, that it is only speculators who were playing in the, excuse me, on the parallel margins. So here we are, there is now a merger between the IIN window and the parallel window. So what, in your opinion, by way of hindsight, happened to that argument to say that most of the transactions took place on the IIN window rather than on the parallel window? Now, the parallel window always had been a mirage. Now we have closed it. How do you understand what's happening?
Thank you very much. I think, you see, I think the issue is about the sharp practices of people, or even people that engage in the IIE window. Most times people will take foreign exchange from the IIE window and go to the parallel market to sell. For example, what the question that was supposed to occur about people that wants to travel, obtain the BTA from IIE and then cancel the traveling, but they will not return the exchange rate. What happened? They go to the parallel market and sell the exchange rate. To me, I think there is one way we can even curb that. One way of addressing that issue is to make sure that, is it possible to begin to maybe settle BTA with the currency of the country that the travelers want to go. Take, for example, if you are traveling within West Africa and maybe, for example, you want to go to Ghana, rather than applying for dollar, maybe they can pay you the Ghana CD equivalent of the dollar that you require for you to go to Ghana and come back. Because if you get to Ghana, you are not going to spend dollar in Ghana. You are still going to convert that dollar to CD, to Ghana CD, if you want to spend it in Ghana. This will also prevent a kind of a round tripping, where people obtain foreign exchange for BTA and they will not utilize, only for them to come back and sell it in the parallel market. I think part of these sharp practices is what is causing the problem between when we say, oh, A and E is the official window, and there is just very little that is going on in the parallel market, and most of the investors, assess their exchange rate through the in the AIA window. So most of them do that, but at the end of the day, they end up selling this currency in the parallel market. And that is what we are trying, I think CBN to try to do now, by saying, okay, if we close the gap between the parallel market and the AIE window, then that will, at least to some extent, it's not going to completely eliminate these sharp practices, but it's going to reduce it to, significantly, such that at least the pressure now on the foreign reserve can now be sustained or curtailed to certain level when you try to close the gap between the parallel market and the AIE window. So the argument that, okay, if you close the gap between AIE window and the parallel market, that the parallel market will not flourish is still not completely, it's still completely out of place, because it will still exist and people will still go to parallel market, to access, foreign exchange. And those who obtain foreign exchange through AIE window, if they are not properly monitored, just like Dr. Okafo mentioned, if they are not properly monitored, the fact still remains that they will go back to the parallel market to sell and therefore the parallel market will continue to flourish. So I think these are some of the things that we need to make sure that we put checks and balances in place to make sure that at least adequate monitoring of people assessing the foreign exchange in the AIE window, and to make sure that, okay, when they assess such foreign exchange, it is used for the purpose for which it is assessed for. Then not only that, for those who are taking BTA, that we can actually say, okay, take this BTA in the currency of the country you are going for. It can be the dollar equivalent of what you are applying for. If you want to apply for $2,000, but you want to get to Ghana, then we say, okay, take the CD equivalent of $2,000. That will create a kind of limit the pressure that we are going to have on our foreign reserve, and then we can also trade in other countries' foreign exchange. I think if we also adopt that measure, it's likely to keep a check on the pressure on our foreign reserve.
We are back here now, and I'd like to also return to Benin, where we have Professor Obadan. Prof, I don't know, can we possibly get to a point of attainment of fair value for the Naira? What indeed is the best approach at finding a fair value for the Naira? And what are the mechanisms, if any, for the attainment of a real value for the Naira? There are certain parameters to determine the real value of this currency, because I also know that in some nations they say that they deliberately devalue the currency. I wouldn't know what that means. I recall those days, America against China. To say, look, China deliberately devalued the currency, and there was an advantage to that, which personally I didn't understand. But can we have a real value of this currency?
Thank you very much, Kirian. Very great question. Yes, we can have a real value of the currency, or what you call the fair value, of the Naira. I think that question becomes pertinent now, because I think I've read somewhere, some people saying already that the Naira is undervalued, following the, floating of the currency. Previously, people were talking about overvalued Naira, and that's why we had arbitrage and all that and so on. But yes, we can, in economics, there are useful approaches to determine the real value of the Naira. One approach, which is quite useful, and which some countries adopt, and which the Central Bank of Nigeria has adopted for quite some time, is the purchasing power parity approach. In other words, to determine the exchange rate of the Naira, in relation to the US dollar, we find out how much Naira can buy a certain quantity of goods in Nigeria. Let's say for the purpose of this analysis that the Naira can buy a bottle of beer, standard bottle of beer, at 400 Naira. If in the United States, that same standard bottle of beer of the same quality and size, can be bought by $1, then such approach would have taken into cognizance the rates of inflation, the purchasing power parity in both countries. So in that case, in a very simple way, the exchange rate of the Naira in relation to the dollar will be 400 to $1. In other words, exchange rate is determined on the basis of the ability of each currency to buy a certain basket of goods and services. I think the Central Bank of Nigeria has used that one for quite some time, and it was the basis for the official exchange rate, market determined exchange rate that we had. But I think because of the structural problems in the economy, inflation rising due to certain drivers, and then the low productivity in the economy and low supply of foreign exchange to the country, you found that invariably the exchange rate was depreciating against the backdrop of very high appetite of Nigerians to import goods and services. In other words, very high propensity. So to come to your question, empirically, the real value of the Naira can be determined through comparing purchasing powers of the two currencies in the two countries. And in our circumstance, if the production level were reasonable, country exports reasonable quantities of goods and services and earns foreign exchange, that one will support the exchange rate, support the Naira in a very significant way, such that the kind of depreciation we are witnessing now, may not, be the case. So,
Professor Mike Abadan, we're going to have to take a pause at this time so that we have a commercial break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service.
We must all join hands to work hard so that we build a country for our grandchildren.
One people.
We need a famine to put things right, things that have gone wrong before, to try and put right. For the love of country.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Subsidy can no longer justify its ever increasing cost and the wake of dry resources. We shall instead be channeled to fund to better investment in public infrastructure, education, healthcare, and jobs that will materially improve the lives of our people.
All right, I know that Kisle wants to pop up one question for Professor Ango.
All right, Kirian, thank you very much. Professor Yushao Ango, well, some would say that it's probably early days, but they say that the morning can often show you what the rest of the day would be like. I'm just wondering, are there precautions that we need to start taking at this time? Because some of the very well-known speculators in the currency business are probably not just looking in our direction yet. I'm sure you're all familiar with George Soros. George Soros, you saw what he did to the Bank of England, leading to the devaluation of the pound. And of course, what he also did with respect to the currencies of other economies. You made a point early on in this conversation, Prof, that it's possible that what we are seeing with the exchange rate of the Naira is that some persons are going to borrow funds in order to buy Forex for speculative purposes, to say, look, let's hedge and see what that is going to be like. Does that remind you of what played out in 2007 and 2008 with the capital market and the crisis that it occasioned, not just in that market, but ultimately with the fate of some of the banks? So are we fully conscious of the wider ramifications of what is playing out, that parallel markets and IIN window have merged, and yet nobody is talking about what we are seeing in terms of inflow of Forex? Prof.
We're actually right now enjoying the beauty of what has happened, because at least for, if nothing, government will have a lot of revenue, which was being lost to speculators and other people who are around tripping. So that has been taken care of. Now what needs to be done to ensure we don't fall into some of those things is that for the monetary and regulatory authorities, I'm talking about specifically the central bank, to ensure that anywhere, every possibility of leakages, every possibility is blocked. The market should be a market, as stated, that is open, that is free, that allows free entry and exit. But as much as possible, any sharp practices should be stopped. Now, earlier on, people have spoken about sharp practice in terms of travelers, for example, who will now buy BTA but not travel. But it's much more than that, and I think we need to stress that. In reality, there are some banks who are actually putting up the documents, and doing as if they have sold some of these foreign exchange, to customers who are supposed to fly out of the country, but they have not done that. They round trip the money and sell it that was what used to happen. So any leakage should be stopped. As other leakages that were possible, which I have mentioned again in this program earlier, was some people were opening accounts, all sorts of accounts in all banks, and then they were taking the money, the ATMs, abroad, and if there's a limit of $100 per day or something like that, they will withdraw those 100, maybe 100 times, and then by the time they accumulate so much, they will return the money. So there are many ways. We know also there were other ways. For example, the fact that central bank was selling money to the Beirut changes, we know that there are some powerful people that own 50, 30, 20 Beirut changes, and they were enjoying a lot of these, free, if you like, funds. So whatever or wherever there is a leakage, that should be blocked as much as possible. The market should be as transparent as possible, but the central bank should now allow the market to play itself. There are many things that were wrong with us, sincerely. Like, for example, in most countries you go to, the right thing is, those who are exporting, are supposed to bring back their export proceeds to the country and sell that is how it's not. Nobody was looking up to government. Nobody was normally is looking up to central banks, to fund it. Central bank is there if they need money. If government needs money, they will now bring it to the market, sell it to the market, and then make that money available in the local currency But that's not what's happening here. Some people will export products. That money they will keep to themselves. They will not actually bring it and play it in the market. Now, every encouragement. Now, there is every encouragement to do that. Now, before this change came into effect, when you export, when you bring your proceeds back, Central Bank was paying, again, 65 Naira for each dollar, when you sell in the I&E market, so that, to compensate you, to encourage you to do that. All of that has given room and has given opportunity and has encouraged, people to cut corners, and take advantage of the country. Whatever we need to do to block those things are what we are supposed to do. And then, whenever they realize, as we have realized now, for example, that maybe Naira is undervalued, then gradually, not swiftly, gradually they should intervene in the market in a way, that will give stability, that will give comfort, that will encourage everybody. So long as there is nothing to fear, there will not be panic. And if there is no panic, there won't be people running, to dump this and that. The only other thing that unfortunately we cannot stop, like I said earlier, is, stock market activities, money market activities also impact the foreign exchange market. And Nigerians in diaspora are many, and quite a number of them, seeing the high rates and things like that, are bringing in their money. Anytime they see anything that gives them concern or fear, then that is when they withdraw. That was what happened in 2007. That was what happened, I'm sure, in the Asian crisis. So those are the kind of things that should be avoided. Stability, maintenance of consistency in policy, and blocking of loopholes, and leakages should be what we should be facing. If we do that continuously and we have engineered enough confidence in the market, I believe there will be less and less opportunity for people to play pranks. And then, of course, our security agencies, NFIU and EFCC and things like that, they should be watchful. If there are any suspicious event, they should not wait until they manifest. Let them take preventive measures so that some people do not bring down, some of these achievements that have been made already.
All right, Professor Ango, it's always a pleasure when you do some analysis, and I pick one line. So many things are wrong with us, and that is properly established. Now, this aspect that I want to take you on, Dr. Okafor. Professor in Benin captured it properly when he said that we have appetite for dollar as a currency, and there are persons who are into dollar business. As a matter of fact, that's the only business that they know: buy and sell. That's what they do, and they all have multiple domiciliary accounts that they use to operate that, and all that also exists in the banks. We are here in this country where we saw that at a point in time we became dollarized. And then TBN governor cried out to say, look, many people are doing businesses with dollars, transacting with dollars. If you go to marriage ceremonies, or you see people spraying dollars and what have you. Even government officials, ministers, CEOs of agencies in this country then were spending dollars. It's still happening anyways. If you investigate, spending dollars. In a countries like China, if you spend, you are dead. You are a dead man. You don't need to negotiate that, because if you spend another person's currency, in that country, you just forget it. Because they are, in short, I wouldn't say that they worship their money, but they have great respect for their money. But if you have to stay in that country to spend their currency, you go to specific places for exchange. Otherwise, you're on your own. Right, but in our own, I'm not sure it's like that. Now, how can the Apex Bank conduct proper due diligence and make Nigerian Forex market adhere to the spirit and letter of extant laws and relevant rules and regulations? And then how do we determine the point of disparity to parity?
Okay. First off, we have to look at it from the foundation, right? I think we've come to a point where there needs to be both fiscal and monetary synergy. working hand in hand, because the monetary authorities can only do so much. That's the truth about it. Now, if we're looking with regards the laws, different countries have different laws that guide them based on certain agreements that they have. But if we're going to talk about the spending, the dollarization, right? One of the major reasons why the country is highly dollarized is because there is no other attractive investment in the country. Truth is, when there is just oil and dollar, you have to pick one. If one is highly regulated, the next one is the one that will be abused. And the truth about this is, in an investment space where there is excessive investment happening, the chances are those that are dollarizing might be attracted to start investing. Take for instance now, investors are already trooping in, right? We have FPIs. The problem with the country is we have more FPIs than FDIs.
Explain.
Foreign portfolio investors. So foreign portfolio investors are those that they bring in money when it looks attractive. The moment they see any hiccup in the system, they pull out. Now, why a lot of them have not been coming in the FPIs now is because when they want to pull out, it takes 4 to 5 months to pull out, and it wasn't attractive for them again. So what they decided to do is watch the market. For the FDIs, they are coming in to spend more on infrastructure and security of their investments while bringing in money, which doesn't make sense to them. So if we have a space where there is at least the barest minimum, if not infrastructure, security at the barest minimum, we'll begin to see FDIs, which is more sustainable than FPIs. But right now we are dealing with more FPIs, right? That's foreign portfolio investors, than foreign direct investors. And because we are dealing with that, the truth is, at that point, everybody is dollarizing. Everybody has to speculate. The only thing we can do right now is to just what for the markets to deplete or depreciate and then cash in. It's just
what does it do to the Naira?
Exactly, it depreciates the Naira, right? Like Professor Badan said, right? There are speculations that are positive and there are negative speculations. In Nigeria, unfortunately, we've been doing more negative speculations than positive. Unfortunately, it's the foreign countries that do the positive speculations for us. Take, for instance, Bank of America, like you said, that have been speculating that the Naira is actually undervalued, right, currently, because right now it's supposed to be 680. And a very good example, which I wanted to use, is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola there goes for $1. Meanwhile, here it's at, I think, around 150. If you remove that from this, our 750, you'll be seeing 680, 650, which is where we surround. So I think it's the investment space that is going to stop this, not laws, because people always go around the laws. Some of the lawmakers actually break the laws. We need to stay.
I was wondering, Dr. Okafor, look, these arguments that we've heard since 1986, when the Naira devaluation began with the introduction of the second-tier foreign exchange market in September of 1986. Oh, you will hear this, you will hear that, you will hear this, you will hear that. And ever since that first trading in 1986, the Naira has never been able to recover to its previous value. Now, my question is going to Professor Michael Bader. Professor Michael Bader, look, at some point in this country, we were hearing the Naira is overvalued, the Naira is overvalued. As it were, a reasonable voice, shall we say, is saying that, look, the Naira now is undervalued. Why is the market not responding to this calm and sober assessment of the value of the Naira? That's one. Second point, and I asked Femi Ogundele that same question from my Ibadan Network Center. We always said that most of the transactions took place on the higher end window rather than the parallel fringes. Why is it now that all transactions are now valued at the merged rates, which of course mimic the parallel value of the Naira? So two questions. Earlier one repeated to Femi Ogundele, and the first one to you is, look, sober voices, analytical voices are telling us that the Naira is now undervalued, but the market is not responding. But in the past, whenever we heard that the Naira was overvalued, then everybody will go haywire. What is the psychology of the market?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. The psychology of the market derives from the fundamental or structural problems. The foreign exchange market has been deregulated. The stock of foreign exchange has not improved, just like Dr. Kafo rightly alluded to. The stock of foreign exchange reserves actually is depleting. Like he rightly said, as at May, when I looked at the figures, the stock of foreign reserves was around 34 point something billion US dollars, which it had been going down from a little over 40 billion last year down, because there has been no meaningful accretion to the foreign exchange stock, either through export of goods and services or through capital inflows. The oil sector, in which reliance had been placed for a long time, which had been the major source of perhaps over 90% of accretion to foreign exchange reserves, has in the past 2 years not added any dollar to the stock of foreign exchange reserves. So it's through other smaller channels that the foreign exchange reserve stock have been growing. But at the same time, the demand for foreign exchange has not abated. They expected partly to choke off some import demand for goods and services. But we have not witnessed much of that because of the structural weakness of the economy again. Production depends on imported raw materials, intermediate goods, and capital goods. There are essentials that must be imported, and there are economic agents that are desperate to have access to foreign exchange, either for production purposes or genuine purposes or for sheer capital flight. So these factors are still in operation, and that's one reason why the Naira has depreciated. If we, to the extent to which it has, in the foreign exchange market, now leading to, stakeholders talking about undervaluation of the Naira. And therefore, if the Naira must appreciate like it did around the 2007, 2008, when the economy could boast of 64 billion US dollars as foreign stock. At that time, the parallel market rate and the official rate were virtually the same. And so, for the Naira to appreciate, we need to do something about production of export goods and services. We need to check the appetite for importation of all kinds of things importable from the global economy. We need to show moderation and recognize that it's not responding, to the demands the way it should. So invariably, the Naira will appreciate, the currency will appreciate when the economy begins to earn more foreign exchange. Perhaps the oil sector is revamped, and we now...
Thank you, Professor Obadan, once more. We would like to appreciate your professorial approach to this conversation this morning. But actually, we don't have time anymore to go through the next question, which was meant for Femi Ogundele. But on that note, gentlemen, we would like to appreciate all of you for being here this morning. Dr. Tochukwu Okanfo, Senior Economic Analyst and Lecturer, Base University, Abuja.
Thank you so
much, Doctor. Professor Yusha Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, Kaduna State University. We would like to thank you again for being with us. As always, it's been a pleasure. And Professor of Economics and the Chairman, Goodmark Education Academy, Benin City, and non-executive director and member monetary policy, Professor Mike Obadan, reached us from Benin. Thank you, Prof, for coming. And Femi Ogundele, Associate Research Professor, NESA, thank you for being our guest this morning. All right, and next for us is foreign news.
Senegalese President Macky Sall has ended months of tense uncertainty by saying he would not seek a third term next year, clearing the way for open elections in the West African nation, long considered a bastion of democracy in a troubled region. The president had until now remained coy about his ambitions, stoking tensions over whether he would use a constitutional revision to argue he could extend the country's traditional two-term maximum. On the eve of Sall's nationwide address, his fiercest critic, Ousmane Sonko, had urged the public to come out en masse and oppose him. Deadly clashes erupted last month between Sonko supporters and the security forces, claiming at least 16 lives. Hundreds of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, including those from various political factions, staged a sitting protest yesterday to condemn Israel's military operation on the Jenin refugee camp in the northern West Bank and to show support for their fellow countrymen. The Israeli military launched its largest operation at dawn on Monday in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin in more than 2 decades, targeting what it calls armed Palestinian militants. At least 8 Palestinians, including 5 teenagers, were killed and 80 more were injured in the operation so far, the Palestinian Health Ministry said, with fatalities expected to rise. This is Israel's second military operation on Jenin in less than 2 weeks.
Let's go back now to the world of sports.
Super Eagles winger Ademola Lookman has won Atalanta Player of the Season award. Lookman was recognized by the fans for his exemplary display in what was his first season at the club. The former Leicester City player beat Teun Kopinas and Martin Donran to the award. The 25-year-old scored 15 goals and registered 8 assists in all competitions for Ladea. The Nigerian linked up with the Jean Perez disappearance side from Bundesliga outfit RB Leipzig last summer. Atalanta will compete in the Europa League next season after finishing in 7th position in the 2022-2023 campaign. And in tennis, Novak Djokovic dried the court with his towel and urged the crowd to blow in a farcical rain display as his Wimbledon title defense began with a win. Djokovic beat Argentina's Pedro Kachkin 6-3, 6-3, 7-6 on center court. An American teenager, Coco Gauff, was the first big-name casualty at Wimbledon after losing a high-quality match against resurgent Soviet Kenin. 7th-seed Gauff lost 6-4, 2-6, 6-4 in the first round to qualify Kenin, who has dropped down the rankings since winning the 2022 Australian Open.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for us today. We thank you for being with us. Tomorrow is another day, same time, as always, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umayedu. Have a great day.